worship. I love to hear God's people sing praises to Him. Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Here I am. Send me. Here I am. Send me. Isaiah chapter 6. We're going to read verses 1 through verse 8. And then we're going to walk through this great passage together as we're thinking about missions and our responsibility in the world and my place and where do I fit and what do I do and why. Isaiah 6, 1 through 8. If you'd follow along in your Bible, I'll read out loud. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a high and lofty throne. And the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphim were standing above him. They each had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their faces. With 2, they covered their feet. And with 2, they flew. One called to another, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of armies. His glory fills the whole earth." The foundations of the doorways shook at the sound of their voices, and the temple was filled with smoke. Then I said, "Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, because my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of armies." Then one of the seraphim flew to me, and in his hand was a glowing coal that he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, "Now that this has touched your lips, your iniquity is removed and your sin is atoned for." Then I heard the voice of the Lord asking, "Whom should I send? Who will go for us?" I said, "Here I am. Send me." John Piper wrote a book on missions called "Let the Nations Be Glad." It was a seminal work. It was a powerful book when it came out. It was a game changer. The first paragraph of the first chapter of the book is this, quote, "Missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exists because worship doesn't. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God is ultimate, not man. When this age is over and the countless millions of the redeemed fall on our faces before the throne of God, missions will be no more. It is a temporary necessity, but worship lasts forever." Missions exists because worship doesn't. Missions is not about getting people to think the way we do. Missions is about getting people who don't even know the sovereign Lord to worship Him with all their heart and soul and mind and strength. There are a couple of things I noticed this week in my study on Isaiah. I went back and read Isaiah 1 through 5 in preparation to talk about Isaiah 6. I just wanted to get a lay of the land, so to speak. And there are 2 things I found that I want to mention to you, and I want you to put a pin in them because we'll come back. I'm sorry I keep having to do this, but it's got to go somewhere. Sorry, see, you didn't, that's, people at home are turning us off of live stream like. 2 things I want you to put a pin in. One is in Isaiah 6 and verse 5, when Isaiah says, "Then I said, woe is me, for I'm ruined." That is the first time in the book of Isaiah that he speaks. The first 5 chapters in Isaiah, he's saying the Lord said this, the Lord said that, the Lord said this to his people, and this happened and that happened. But this is the first time he spoke. Interesting. And it's interesting that not only that he spoke, but what he said. So put a pin in that. Here's the other thing that I found interesting. Names are important. Like, my name is John. My brother calls me Johnny because he's earned the right. He can. My son calls me Dad. My granddaughters call me Pop. Every name means something. We have some folks in our church. We have a couple of church members in our church that are dear friends that I love dearly. But whenever they talk to me, I know where the conversation's going based on the name they use. If they say, John, I know this is going to be personal. If they say pastor, I know it's going to be a little more spiritual. Maybe a religious question or something like that. And it's interesting when they say, pastor, I know where we're going. If they say, John, I know where we're going. There's something in a name. I think it's 400 plus times in the book of Isaiah, the name Lord is used. And it's something like, don't quote me on the exact number, but it's something like 160 plus times the name God is used in Isaiah. Now, here's what's interesting to me. In the first 5 chapters of Isaiah, 34 times. I got my numbers reversed. In chapter 1 through 5, 34 times the name Lord is used, but every single time it's all capital letters. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, capital L, small o, small r, small d. First time. Put a pin in that. We're going to get back to that. So often we humans want to do things backwards from the way God wants us to do stuff. We think missions is a program, and it's got to have organization, and I appreciate it. Organization, you got to be organized. You have to have budgets and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't start with us. I want you to look at this outline. Isaiah saw himself. It was a look outward. He saw the world and he saw his place in the world, but that didn't happen until he looked inward and saw who he was, and that didn't happen until he looked upward and saw who God is. We want to start with us. God wants us to start with him. It's always been about him, and it's always going to be about him. It's about the Lord. So 34 times, it's all capitals, Lord, which is Yahweh, Jehovah. Yet here in chapter 6, verse 1, it's capital L, small o, small r, small d, which is Adonai. It's a different meaning for who he is. So let's walk through this. First of all, there's this look upward. Verse 1, in the year that King Uzziah died, that gives us some historical reference. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. I saw the Lord. That's Adonai. That name means master. It means majestic. It refers to total authority, and it reinforces God's matchlessness. That's Spiros Zodhiates' definition from his Greek and Hebrew studies. So, master, majestic, total authority, and reinforces God's matchlessness. Whenever you see Lord in the Bible, capital L, small o, r, d, that is in the Old Testament, that's Adonai. In the New Testament, it's Kyrios. It's the same thing, that there is no one like him. He is above everyone and everything. He is on a plane all by himself. There's not him and somebody else. It's just him. And after Isaiah heard God for 5 chapters, chapter 1, the Lord said this, all capitals, Yahweh, Jehovah. The Lord said this, the Lord did this, the Lord did this, the Lord did this. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw Adonai. I saw this matchless one. We're used to that if you've ever read historical books or seen movies and stuff about periods of time in history, people that had kings, you would often hear the name, my Lord. What would you like, my Lord? Where do you want me to go, my Lord? It is a recognition that the Lord, whether it's the Lord of a house, the Lord of a country, the Lord of a manor, the Lord of a people, that person is matchless. Now, I wish I thought of this in the first service because this is really good. One of the names for Jesus is the King of and the Lord of lords. He is the King of kings. What you see in verse 1, in the year that King Uzziah died, that is a temporary mortal man. I saw the Lord, that's the eternal King, high, lifted up. Kings come and go. Presidents come and go. All God's people said amen. Rulers come and go. Important people come and go. God is eternal. He doesn't go. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He is immutable. He doesn't change. He doesn't go. He is the Lord Adonai of lords. Now, what he says about him in verse 1, 3 different things. I saw the Lord seated on the throne. So there's this throne, and he sees this. He is high and exalted or lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Can you imagine the hem of his garment filling the temple? Now, the temple was massive, was huge. As a matter of fact, when Solomon was dedicating the temple in 1 Kings 8, and he's praying this prayer of dedication, the people are praying, he's leading them and praying to the Lord to dedicate this temple. Here's what he says: even the highest heavens cannot contain you. How much less this temple that I built. End of quote. So Isaiah, he looks up and he sees Adonai, high and lifted up on this throne, and the robe, his train of his robe filled the temple. Verse 2. Seraphim were standing above him. They're floating, they're hovering. As one commentary would say, seraphim were never still. They were constantly on the move. They're hovering. Seraph means flames. They were fiery angelic beings. The seraphim are the order of angelic creatures who bear similarity to the 4 living creatures in Revelation 4 or the cherubim in Ezekiel chapter 10. We don't know how many are here. We know that 2 are mentioned. One spoke to the other one, so there's 2. But we know from Revelation that there are millions, it's called myriads in some translations, or millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of angels. So imagine you're Isaiah. You're a human being. And all of a sudden you look up, and there is Adonai on his throne, high and lifted up. His train is filling the temple, and there are these fiery angels just flying around him with 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, with 2 they flew, and they were singing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Now notice in verse 3, holy, holy, holy. The only time in the Bible that one of God's attributes is mentioned 3 times back to back to back like this. There's nowhere in the Bible that says God is love, love, love. You know, it says God is love. It says God is merciful. God is kind. But here it says holy, holy, holy. It's the only time in the Bible with those attributes, holy, holy, holy. And you find it implied in Revelation, of course, but of all of his attributes, that's the only one that's mentioned 3 times back to back to back. Holy, holy, holy. God's holiness is his uniqueness. It's his one-of-a-kindness, that he is not only Adonai, he's matchless, he is holy, he is distinct. Not only is he greater than everybody else, he's different than everybody else. Like if you saw that, you would go, yeah, he's distinct. on his own planet, on his own place, by himself, nobody else. He is separate from everything and everyone. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord. Now, here are capital letters, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. Now, I know this is going to come up at lunch, so let me go ahead and clear the air. This is called a tetragrammaton. Hebrew language doesn't have any vowels. We have 5, maybe 6, depends on who you talk to. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes? Okay, but they did not think Y was a vowel because the name Yahweh starts with a Y. But there were no vowels in it. So it was YWHW. It's a tetragrammaton, which means 4 letters. That's what the word means. They, the Hebrew people, felt, the high priests, the leaders, they felt so unworthy to even say Yahweh, they wouldn't say it. We are so free and loose with God. Do you know that when the monks would translate the Bible, when they would write, not translate, when they would make copies by hand, they didn't have copy machines or emails, when they were copying the scriptures, that every time they wrote the name God or the name Lord, they would have to go take a bath and then use a new quill before they could continue? Because of their reverence for the name of God. And we use the name God in our culture, and we use the name Jesus in our culture as a punchline to a joke. And we wonder why we are the way we are. They couldn't even say Yahweh. They were afraid of the fear of the Lord. They were afraid of insulting the Lord. They were afraid of taking light the Lord. So from Yahweh came a derivative of Yahweh, which is Jehovah. Watch. I'm going to do it so you left to right for you. Yahweh, Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahweh, Jehovah. Sounds similar. So it was just sort of a, Jehovah became a form of Yahweh. And Jehovah are 3 Hebrew words put together. Now check this out. This is amazing to me. By the way, Yahweh means supreme, mighty, eternal, self-existent. So this name for God means supreme, mighty, eternal, self-existent. Yahovah. It's from 3 different words. Yehi, Y-E-H-I, Yahai, and then Hove, H-O-V-E, and then Haya, H-A-H-Y-A-H. Yahovah. Yahai, Hove, Haya. Check this out. Yahai means will be. Will be. Yahai, will be. Hove, being. Haya, was. Will be, being, was. Jehovah. Yahweh is the great I am. Not the great I was. Not the great I'm going to be. The great I am. When Moses was struggling with God's call in Exodus chapter 3 and verse 14, and Moses said to God, who shall I tell Pharaoh? I'm going to go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And he's going to say, who are you and who sent you? What am I supposed to say? God said, you tell them I am sent you. Yahweh, Yahovah, sent you. The self-existent, eternal, mighty one, supreme. And then it says, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of armies, the Lord of hosts, or the Lord Almighty. His glory fills the whole earth. That's his Shekinah glory, which was the dwelling of God. It was used to describe the visible presence of the Lord. Now, if you dig deep and you study the word glory in Scripture, you will find that it means, among other things, weighty, W-E-I-G-H-T-Y, weighty or heavy. Weighty or heavy. His glory is weighty or heavy. Now, some of y'all are too young to remember this. Some of us are old enough to remember this. Some of us are embarrassed that we ever watched The Brady Bunch or Batman, but we did. We should start a support group. But when I was in high school, back in the 70s, if somebody said something that you thought was right on, you would say, among other things, you might say, man, that was heavy. Remember do y'all ever say that? Man, that was heavy. That was heavy. That was weighty. Wow. God's glory, the glory of Yehovah, Yahweh, the great I am, is weighty. It's heavy. By the way, when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees in John chapter 8, you know what set them off? He said, before Abraham was, I am. That fried their bacon. Oh yeah, Abraham rejoiced to see my day. Jesus said in John 8, Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he was glad before Abraham was, I am. Abraham knows me. I made him. I am. Wow. In Daniel chapter 5, Belshazzar, the king at the time, was having a drunken party with his friends, people that would tell him what he wanted to hear, tell him how great he was. And they went to the storehouse and they got all of the goblets and things that they had taken from Israel when they took them captive. And they filled those things full of alcohol, and they were toasting to themselves, and they were partying, and all of a sudden this hand started writing on the wall, Mene Tekel Upharsin. His knees shake. His guys don't know what it means, so he sends for Daniel. Daniel comes in and says, here's what it means. But part of that says, the interpretation is, thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Daniel said to Belshazzar, Yahweh is heavy. You have been weighed and found wanting. He is weighty and heavy. You are a Twinkie. And do you know that very same night Belshazzar died? He was so busy toasting himself with the goblets that belonged to the holy, righteous Yahweh and Adonai. And God said, you think you're heavy? You think you're important? Because you have a government job? You don't know the meaning of the word heavy. You don't know the meaning of the word weighty. You don't know the meaning of the word glory. I am glory. I am weighty. I am heavy. I am Adonai. I am Yahweh. I am Jehovah. His glory fills the whole earth. The foundations of the doorway shook. Verse 4. They shook. Now Isaiah is watching all this. They shook at the sound of their voices, and the temple was filled not only with his veil, but the temple was filled with smoke. That's what he saw. That was his look upward. Wow. So now, let's pull the second pin. Then I said. So what did he say? God, you're lucky to have me. I'm glad to be here with you. This is fun. Oh no. When he saw Adonai and Elohim in his glory, it's like the Lord just kind of peeled back the curtain of himself for just a second. And he saw it. And every once in a while in the Bible, the Lord would do that, either God the Father or the Son or the Holy Spirit. Do you remember in the Gospel of John where they came to get Jesus in the garden and they said, we're looking for Jesus, and he said, I am he? That the soldiers fell backward. Do you know why? I love what one of my professors in college, Elmer Towns, said. God pulled back the curtain of omnipotence and rendered them helpless. He just kind of peeled back the curtain of himself in the garden and said, I am he. Boom! All these hardened soldiers that had seen everything and done everything were laid out. What did Isaiah do? He saw this. He said, let me pick up my chin for a second. Then he said, woe is me. I am ruined because I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, because my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of armies, the Lord Almighty, the Lord of hosts. When you see the Lord's perfection, when we see the Lord's perfection, we automatically, by proxy, see the imperfection of ourselves. When you see that, how can you look at yourself the same way again? Wow. Then, verse 6, one of the seraphim flew to me, and in his hand was a glowing coal that he had taken from the altar with tongues. He touched my mouth with it and said, and this is the seraphim talking to him now, now that this has touched your lips, your iniquity is removed. Your sin is atoned for. Atonement. Forgiveness. Feels good to be forgiven, doesn't it? God Almighty is the only one that knows all the stuff I've done that I wish I could undo. But when he sees me and he sees you, he doesn't see us as damaged goods. He sees us as forgiven, justified, just as if I'd never sinned, atoned. My sins have been atoned for. So Isaiah sees the Lord, and then he sees himself as this broken beyond repair, ruined human being, and the angel takes this hot coal, this seraphim takes this seraph, this hot piece of coal, and he touches his mouth, because he's going to need that mouth to preach. He touches his mouth, and he says, now your sins have been forgiven. Your sins have been atoned for. Guilt is removed. Sins are forgiven. Then you see looking outward. So then I heard the voice of the Lord. That's all. That's Adonai. Then I heard the voice of Adonai, the matchless one, saying, asking, whom should, what's the next word? I send. And who will go for, what's the next word? I believe that's the Trinity. Now, I can't prove this, and if a really smart theologians got me in a debate on it, they could make me look really stupid. But I wonder if when God said, whom shall I send? Not we, I send. And who will go for us? 3 in 1, 1 in 3. I wonder if that's got anything to do with holy, holy, holy. God the Father is holy. God the Son is holy. God the Spirit is holy. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, and the whole earth is filled with His glory. After hearing the seraph's words in verse 3 and verse 7, then he hears the Lord's voice. Whom should I send? Whom should I send? Who will go for us? And Isaiah said, I don't know, you're going to have to send somebody. Is that what he said? No. He said the only thing that any rational human being could say. I'll go. I'm not much, but I'll go. I can't look at this. I can't look at him and not go. That's the motivation of missions. We don't need to recruit people. We just need to get people to fall in love with Jesus, and Jesus will recruit them. When you see the Lord for who he is, and then you see yourself for who you are, and then the Lord asks you to do something, you go, I'll do it. I'm glad to do it. I got saved when I was 8 years old. I preached my first sermon when I was 14. So I'd already got it in my head that I was going to do ministry. But something happened in my heart one Sunday night when I was 16. I don't think people get saved immediately and all of a sudden they go into the ministry. You know, they get saved on a Sunday morning and Monday they're on a plane going to be a missionary. I don't think that happens. Once in a blue moon, something like that might happen where somebody just is radically grabbed by the Lord and just goes. But a lot of times we get saved and then we walk with Christ for a while and we grow in our understanding of who he is. And then when we see what he wants us to do with our lives, we go, yeah, okay. I'd already preached my first sermon. I already said I was going to do ministry for a career. I'd already said I'm going to do this. When I get out of high school, I'm going to Bible college. I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing in my life. My dad was a preacher. My uncle was a preacher. I'm doing it. One Sunday night, when I was about 16, we had an altar call. Now, I was raised Baptist, and we always had altar calls. If you have 3 Baptists at Waffle House, you're going to have an altar call. That's what we did. Every Sunday morning we sang Just As I Am. Every Sunday night we sang I Surrender All. Every Wednesday night we sang Have Thine Own Way, Lord. And I loved it. I loved the way I was raised. But that Sunday night, I don't remember what Pastor Brian spoke on, Gary Bryan. We started singing I Surrender All. Man, I hit that aisle. And I went to the altar and I got on my face. I'm 16. I got on my face. I said, if you want me, you got me. I don't know what happened to me that night. I'd been planning on this for years, since I was 8. I don't know if that night I saw the Lord in a different light. Or maybe things clicked in my heart, in my mind of who he is. But when you see him, and then you see yourself, and then he calls you to go be a missionary or to go help with Family Promise. Whatever he calls you to do, and you've seen him, and you've seen yourself, and you've seen that he has forgiven you and purged away your sins, and he says, who am I going to send? I'll go. I'll go. And I doubled up on my classes my senior year. I took 2 years of classes in 1 year because I wanted to get to Bible college because I wanted to go. Because he wanted me to go. I wanted to get out of there and go. Every believer is a product of a missionary. You know, every one of us is a product of a missionary. Do you know that? Somebody brought the gospel to our country, our people, our family, our village, wherever. Brought the gospel to us. Every one of us are products of missionaries, and every one of us in our own way are missionaries. And God has called us to be a part of what he's doing. I cannot imagine doing anything else with my life. and what I'm doing. It's about Adonai. You know that, right? It's about Elohim, God. It's about Yahweh, Jehovah. It's about His message. It's about His truth. And 10,000 years from now, when all of our jobs have played out and we've retired and we're done, our worship around that throne will just be kicking into gear. Missions will be over. Funerals will be over. Jobs will be over. Work will be done. And our worship of Him will have just started to kick it in gear. Can you imagine when every person who's ever been saved is in heaven at the same time, in the same place, around that throne, with glorified bodies and glorified voices, with nothing but time? You talk about a worship service. That is something I'm looking forward to. And it will be. Some of y'all are going through difficult times. I know you are, because I've talked to you. And you can't hardly keep your head above water right now, trying to just get through the day. And I want you to know something. It will be worth it all when we see Jesus. Life's trials will seem so small when we see Christ. One glimpse of His dear face, all sorrow will erase. So just bravely run that race till we see Christ. Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, we love You so much. We desire with all of our hearts to serve You and to please You and to be there when You say, who am I going to send? We want to throw our hand up as fast as we can get it up and go, I'll go. Send me. Whatever You want me to do, wherever You want me to go, however You want me to live, I'm there. Count me in. Put me in, Coach. I'm ready to play. Lord, we love You. We adore You. We praise You. We thank You for this time to gather around Your throne, to think for just a little bit of what it must have been like for Isaiah, what he experienced in that moment, and what it will be like for us when we leave this world and we open our eyes in glory in Your presence around Your throne. We love You and we praise You. In Jesus' name, amen.